of the cycle. Before a girl starts to menstruate, there's really not much going on down there besides bacteria being cleaned up. No eggs are being released or anything until she begins her cycle. So the first day of her period is the day cycles begin. That's when fertility starts and all of that stuff. You can't get a woman pregnant you can't get a little girl pregnant who's not had a menstrual cycle yet. It would not be possible because eggs aren't being released yet. Even though they're there, that communication hasn't started happening in the brain. So that's why cycle day 1 is always going to be the first day of the period, because that's how it starts. That's the first day. That's when we become women, no matter what age. And then after the menstruation, so menstruation is basically the shedding of the uterine lining, and all the hormones are low at the time, and this is basically the time where cleansing and releasing is occurring. During menstruation, a woman's cervix is usually low and firm, so it's usually lower so that it's just easier for, I guess, the blood to get out without having to travel so far down, so the cervix moves down a little bit in the canal, and then it's firm, more like your chin, like touching the chin, the tip of the chin, and it's blood. After that, we have the follicular phase, they call it. Follicular phase has to do with the ovaries. And during the follicular phase, that happens from the first day of your period all the way till ovulation day. And that is when signals are being sent to the brain telling the ovaries to prepare to release an egg. So as soon as you start your period, that first day of the cycle, signals are already sent to the brain that back down to the ovaries to prepare an egg to be released for ovulation in a few days. You know what I'm saying? And then there's the proliferative phase. The proliferative phase has to do with the uterus. This is from the end of your period, so the last day of your period all the way till ovulation. And then during this time, the uterus is building back up its thick lining that it just shed during menstruation, and the endometrium, well, yeah, that's what's happening. The endometrium, so that tissue around the uterus is becoming thick again, and hormone levels are rising. Specifically, at that time, estrogen is rising, and then ovulation occurs. Naturally, it usually occurs 7 to 10 days after the last day of your period. And so that's like and it's usually the midway point of her woman's cycle when ovulation occurs. And that's what happens. The egg is released from the ovary and the fallopian tube catches it. And then the estrogen is rising, and it signals to the brain to increase the hormone, what they call luteinizing hormone. So a lot of women also don't know that they can take tests to figure out they're pregnant. The ovulation tests are almost the exact same thing as the pregnancy test, except they testing for a different hormone. Pregnancy tests are testing for this hormone called HCG. Ovulation tests are testing for this hormone called LH, which is the luteinizing hormone, like I told you about. So a woman can also take those tests to see when she's ovulating also, if there was ever a question, And then after ovulation occurs and the egg is released and caught by the fallopian tube, the woman then enters the luteal phase. The luteal phase is all about the ovaries, so and it lasts all the way from ovulation to your next period again. And during the luteal phase, there's a little sac that contains the egg. The sac that is released, the sac that contains the egg is released, and that sac is producing estrogen and progesterone, which are two very vital hormones for women. And when those hormones are out of balance, is when women deal with all these issues, or even infertility. So that sac that produces, there's a sac that contains the egg is producing estrogen and progesterone once ovulation occurs. And then the egg transforms into what they call in science, a corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum continues to produce that progesterone and estrogen, so the hormone levels continue to rise. And the rise in progesterone is why a lot of women feel a lot of symptoms following ovulation. It's also why a lot of PMS symptoms occur and stuff like that. And then if the egg is fertilized, progesterone continues to rise to support early pregnancy. A lot of women who have miscarriages, top causes for miscarriages are either lack of iron or hormonal imbalance, not enough progesterone to carry out the pregnancy. That hormone is very important for supporting early pregnancy. And if there's not enough of it, miscarriage will occur.